We do separate certain nationalities as a matter of routine from all of the Middle Eastern countries, and just depends on, but China most certainly we did all the way up until about last year. They're coming now because all their friends got in.
There are large numbers, thousands of Chinese nationals who are coming here from China to study at our universities at the behest, direction, and with the sponsorship of the Chinese Communist Party in support of military-civil fusion and its broader strategy.
So there's no real verification whether they're telling the truth or not.
There's absolutely no way to verify. If someone at the border says, I don't have a criminal record, we don't have the criminal records of China easily accessible. And if we asked the Chinese for them, they wouldn't give them to us.
Hate group, white nationalists. The white nationalist and anti-Semitic Great Replacement conspiracy theory. Hate group.
I am Jewish, and we don't really get with white nationalists. That's not our thing. So get your facts straight.
Americans across the country that have an objection to that, and we got a problem with that. Apparently, the Democrats are saying we're all a bunch of Nazis, white supremacists, anti-Semitic. That's like disconnected from reality, man.
The purpose of today's hearing is to investigate the recent influx of inadmissible migrants from the People's Republic of China to the United States borders. Let me just tick off some of the risks that have been specifically identified in other witnesses' testimony. I've always understood, and lots of evidence before this Congress indicates that China is engaged in very intensive economic espionage against the United States. We've heard testimony, or I recited in my opening statement, about the aggressive Chinese money laundering operations in the United States. Mr. Bensman just made reference to, and news reports have been widespread, including one in North Carolina I heard about Chinese, quote, police stations, which are bent on intimidating, harassing, and in some cases, many awful things against folks of Chinese heritage in the United States. We've heard about cultural exchange programs in college campuses being used as Trojan horses for Chinese intelligence infiltration. So, and then if you've got a rapidly increasing population of Chinese migrants coming in irregularly. So what about all that? Should that be just ignored? Or is it a good thing, perhaps?
I would say neither. I'm suggesting that in the grand scheme of history, you can see that this kind of migration and these kinds of concerns have existed before, that this is the concerns about security risks from irregular migration are not new, that there are plenty of valid concerns about the relationship with China and the kinds of Chinese espionage that might be happening. I am saying, though, that I do not have any, I have not seen anything that suggests that this particular population is part of this espionage network, and I would, there's no definitive evidence one way or the other.
So do you think there needs to be definitive evidence in the case of every...
I think there needs to be, well, I mean, it's not up to me to say. I'm a historian, right? I'm not a policymaker. But because there's no definitive evidence either way, I would caution against this broad-scale assumption that people who are seeking asylum in the United States are in fact, spies coming to undermine it, when there are, in fact, very good other explanations, and there are also lots of historical precedents for that kind of rhetoric having very negative effects on the existing Chinese-American community.
If I'm hearing from the ranking member and Professor Owen, the idea is we really shouldn't say anything about this because it's going to be discriminatory. What about that? Why isn't that true? Or if it is true, what do you say about it?
Well, the U.S., excuse me, the U.S. Homeland Security enterprise, especially in dealing with the border, has for decades isolated particular nationalities based on our relations with their governments. For example, Iran, for when we have immigrants from Iran hit the border, we will set them aside and bring in FBI and CIA and others to interview them to try to figure out, what they're about. Are they good? Are they fleeing the regime, or are they part of the regime? Are they a terrorist actor? North Koreans that hit the border, I mean, everybody can understand why a North Korean would want to leave North Korea, but we also know North Korea is a source of mischief all over the world, and they're sending their representatives. So we do separate certain nationalities as a matter of routine from all of the Middle Eastern countries, and just depends on, but China most certainly we did all the way up until about last year.
Perhaps we'll have another round. I'm conscious of having overstayed my time. So, the ranking member, I'll. No.
One more question?
Well, I think I will do.
We're not beating the.
I appreciate that, Mr. Ranking Member. Right, I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate it, and thank you for that indulgence. Let me follow it up in this way. I do think it's correct to say there is a nationality concern here that's predicated on a hostile relationship of governments that counsels additional concern.
But what I gather from my interviews with many thousands of immigrants on their way here is that they're coming now because all their friends got in, all their relatives just got in. The border's open. We're going for it. Well, like, what if the Americans change their minds all of a sudden? And so there's this big rush on. And I have to say that the Chinese are probably no different. They're going to be looking for lifestyle upgrades. A lot of the Chinese that I meet on the trail seem very well resourced, very well put together. They don't seem like they're starving peasants. They often spend tens of thousands of dollars to make the journey. It's an opportunity for them.
I think you mentioned something about improving infrastructure for vetting and the like at the border. I wanted to give you a chance to elaborate on that.
Thank you very much. And I would agree with you that the vast majority of Chinese nationals who live and study in the United States stay and contribute to our communities. We also have to recognize, however, that there are large numbers, thousands of Chinese nationals who are coming here from China to study at our universities at the behest, direction, and with the sponsorship of the Chinese Communist Party in support of military-civil fusion and its broader strategy. So enhancing those established legal mechanisms to both vet at U.S. embassies and consulates to allow them in, but also recognizing the threat that exists in that legal immigration space is critical. I think many of the—
Well, let me ask you on how to bulk that up. How would you address that?
Having also been a former consular officer, I can acknowledge that the amount of time that you have to adjudicate a visa for a particular entrant is minuscule, sometimes 30 seconds or less to make a decision about a particular student. One of the things that needs to be done is a much broader understanding of the Chinese universities that are involved in military-civil fusion and adding additional scrutiny for those students.
Do you believe the Biden administration is making it any easier for the Chinese nationals to enter this country illegally?
Excuse me. Yes, I do. I think the charts and the graphs and the statistics are pretty clear that when people understand that they will be released once they arrive in the United States, as long as they express a credible fear and the intent to launch an asylum claim, and we do know that 85–90% of those claims are fraudulent, meaning that they're based on facts that just don't generate a claim for asylum that will be approved, then they come. And with social media, that's sort of greatly magnified exponentially the information that's getting back to countries all around the world. I think we're up to like 180 countries now that have been caught entering illegally at the border in the last few years. So when you say that you're not going to detain people, when you are releasing them on their own recognizance, when you're paroling them in, and when they know that the system will not be able to process them for years, then you send a clear signal and people understand it.
Thank you. Do you know what 5 questions that the Chinese nationals in the interview, do you know what the 5 questions are?
Well, I have a completely unconfirmed snapshot of what they are, and they're just basic questions about where you come from. Do you have any affiliation with the Chinese government? Did you pay for your trip to the United States? Did you pay a smuggler? Have you got any prior arrests? A shortened version of the form that visa applicants have to answer, where they're supposed to say, I don't have a criminal record, I'm not a member of the Nazi Party or the Communist Party, and so on.
So they just check it off, so there's no real verification whether they're telling the truth or not.
There's absolutely no way to verify. If someone at the border says, I don't have a criminal record, we don't have the criminal records of China easily accessible. And if we asked the Chinese for them, they wouldn't give them to us, I'm pretty sure, unless it was someone that they wanted back, for example, a dissident.
I want to start by expressing my disappointment that this committee still allows special witnesses from an organization that's been designated as a hate group for publishing the works of white nationalists. Mr. Bensman, yes or no, have you ever used or invoked invasion rhetoric or language when referencing migrants? Okay, well, let me ask you a follow-up. Is your Twitter handle at Bensman Todd, correct? Okay, so I wanna show you here something. As you can see, I have a number of your Twitter posts here, and it's not hard to find examples of you or someone who's doing a good job pretending to be you, uplifting the same invasion rhetoric central to the white nationalist and anti-Semitic Great Replacement conspiracy theory. Let me read just one of them. Border invasion series. Or let me read one more. Bensman says, Biden administration rechanneled migrant waves to hide invasion at southern border. Folks, no one from a hate group should ever be invited to provide testimony before this committee. It hurts our integrity as a committee.
I'll emphasize, unless our intelligence agencies have a reason to flag a migrant, all CBP can do is rely on a migrant story. Most Chinese migrants state that they are here to claim asylum or for economic reasons. For a national security perspective, is relying only on a migrant's word enough to determine whether the migrant came to the United States with nefarious intent. What types of risks does this blind reliance pose?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to recommend a book to Ms. Ramirez, Making Hate Pay by Tyler O'Neill, The Corruption of the Southern Poverty Law Center. I also want to tell you, Ms. Ramirez, that as far as, I don't know what you have on your board, I'd like to study it. There is no hateful anti-Semitic speech in my Twitter feed. I am Jewish, and we don't really get with white nationalists. That's not our thing. So get your facts straight. As far as your...
Mr. Chairman, he's referring to me, so I just wondered if I'm going to...
Gentleman's time from Alabama.
Thank you, sir. Let's go back to that question. What type of risk does the blind reliance pose?
What type of risk does...
What type of risk does this blind reliance related to national security, just if they tell us they're great people, that's what we're doing at our border right now. Oh, I want to come to America. What does this pose whenever they say, come on in?
Well, it's the ultimate stranger danger at the border. That's our problem with having mass migration at these historic levels. We can't know who anyone is. We can't really go to the Chinese, as I think my colleague said, for an intel share. We can't go to really very many countries at all for an intel share.
Thank you. What ways can CBP potentially reduce that risk?
Well, there's not a whole lot they can do. They'll run text database checks. They'll maybe run some criminal history checks, and then they'll let them in. But if they haven't been in the United States to commit crimes in the past, there's not going to be, they're going to come up with a negative, right? It'll be a big blank. So
That's right.
You just have to kind of take their word for it. A lot of them, like I said, dump their ID documents, their passports, and say, my name's Mickey Mouse.
I want to yield some time to my colleague, Ms. Ramirez of Illinois.
Thank you, Congresswoman Clark. Just to follow up from the remarks that the witness just made. So I said the organization, and then I said your tweets, and we will be happy to give you a printout. There's so many of them, so you'll have an opportunity to read them closely after committee. But I want to make sure that, Mr. Chairman, I want to enter this into the record, which is a article from the Southern Poverty Law Center that ranks the immigrant studies as one of the white nationalist organizations.
I object.
Okay, well then let me see if I can enter this court record here that where the Center for Immigration Studies filed a case against the Southern Poverty Law Center, but the courts actually found this to, they dismissed the motion because there was not enough information to be able to determine that they had a case against them.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to include in the record both of the documents that the gentlelady from Illinois has offered.
It's been so moved. Is there a motion to table?
Motion.
Motion before, there's no debate on that motion. All in favor of the motion to table say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say no.
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 The motion, I hear the motion to have been approved, and
I would ask for a recorded vote, Mr.
the
Chairman.
recorded vote. All in favor, let's see, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, I did yield my time to Ms. Ramirez. Since we're going through this process, I hope that my time will be restored.
I would ask the chair to pause the clock at where it was stopped.
Appears to me the clerk paused the clock at 3:15, which I assume is pursuant to.
On that vote, Mr. Chairman, there were 2 ayes and 3 noes.
Motion to table fails. The motion before the committee is the motion of the gentlewoman, or the motion of the gentleman to ranking member to admit the item into the record. All in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Noes have it.
Ask for a recorded vote.
Recorded vote is ordered. The clerk will call the roll.
On that vote, Mr. Chairman, there were 3 ayes and 2 noes.
The motion is adopted, and the item will be received into the record.
We're here today because Republicans are demagoguing and exploiting the xenophobic and white supremacist ideologies that are fueling the immigration debate in this nation. And for those who are showing up at our border, I am concerned about how we as a nation are going to address what is basically a broken immigration system. What can you tell us about the demographics of the Chinese border crossers and why they're leaving China and how they integrate into communities in the United States once they arrive?
Based on what's been reporting so far, there's a lot of the reporting seems to be that they are from China's expansive middle class. You will see that there are people who have spent a couple thousand equivalent of US dollars to make the trip, and they have a harrowing journey through Ecuador and through the Darien Gap and up. And there's people who spent tens of thousands of dollars, which usually allowed them to fly the entire way to Tijuana and then cross the border. The reason why that sort of expansive middle class seems to be the population that's moving, it's people who have something to sell to have the money to do that, but it's also people who have been particularly severely hit by the zero COVID policies and the economic fallout from the pandemic.
My Democrat colleagues across the aisle appear to be saying to Americans across the country that have endured border policies enacted on the day that President Biden was inaugurated. It began as actions, executive actions, to change the policy of this country to open our border. It wasn't the cartels that changed on January the 20th of 2021. It was the President of the United States. It wasn't the 1,954 miles of our border that changed in January 2021. It was the President of the United States. Changed our policies. And the world was listening, was it not, Mr. Bensman, as you pointed out. So Americans that have endured 15 million illegals crossing in our country in 4 years, crime waves rolling across America from sea to shining sea, fentanyl poisoning, killing 100,000 Americans per year. Americans across the country that have an objection to that, and we got a problem with that. Apparently, the Democrats are saying we're all a bunch of Nazis, white supremacists, anti-Semitic. That's like disconnected from reality, man. America is suffering generational trauma because of the Biden administration policies that have blown our border wide open. And now we got Chinese of means, Chinese healthy and well-funded coming into our country, being granted what? Asylum. Is a healthy, well-funded, warrior-age young men coming into our country. Nobody over there has a problem with that? Mr. Bensman, you mentioned interviewing thousands, you said. That's quite a lot. I would say that places you in the expert category, sir. How can we confirm who these Chinese nationals rolling across our southern border, thousands at a time now? How can we confirm? How do we know who they are? They tell us, they give us a name, they give us some documentation, but they're healthy, they're well-funded. They could buy documentation anywhere, quality documentation. How do we know who they are? Are we taking any biometric data from them? Are we getting any documentation, DNA, fingerprints, retinal scans, photographs, etc.?
There should be biometrics taken at different points along the trail. I'm sorry, there should be biometrics collected at different points along the trail in Panama, for example, Costa Rica, if they go through those.
At a processing center.
Yeah, through the.
Talking about at a DHS-run processing center in another country. But does the United States or DHS have possession, from your experience of interviewing these thousands of illegal immigrants, does the United States have files on these people, who they are, fingerprints, retinal scans, et cetera?
I would say in general, they do not. They'll have, and especially they'll have maybe a first fingerprint from somewhere along the trail. They may take them at the border once they get here, but they don't really have anything to bounce them off against.
Okay. So these Chinese nationals coming into our country, from your experience, or that maybe anyone can answer this, are they being reviewed for gang affiliations and gang tattoos, triad tattoos, et cetera?
Currently,
I see a no.
Currently, no.
Mr. Singleton. Dr. Owen, do you know if these Chinese nationals are at least, being looked at for tattoos coming into our country?
I would not know that, no.
Don't know. Mr. Hankinson, are they being checked?
I wouldn't think they have the time to do a whole lot of checking, given how quickly they're being released.
Take your shirt off, 10 seconds, tattoos, yes or no? We do it in jails across the country every day at the local, state, and federal level. We look for tattoos, gang tattoos. We could do it at the border if we wanted to, without hiring one more agent or spending one more penny. Take your shirt off. Do you have tattoos, yes or no? It's simple. We do it at jails across the country. Are we doing that, Mr. Bensman?
I would say not.
The answer is no. The answer is no. Well, my goodness, I've expired my time, Mr. Chairman, but I have not expired my passion. Thank you. I yield.
That hearing is adjourned.